Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the New York Yankees. The 2023 to 2024 offseason is underway. Was a reasonably successful season for the Yankees, 93 and 69 record, won the AL East, had a first round bye in the playoffs. We took care of business in the ALDS against the Los Angeles Angels. But then unfortunately we fell in the ALCS to the Chicago White Sox 4-3. We brought a 3-2 lead back to New York and lost 2 games in a row in the Bronx to fall in the ALCS. And the White Sox went on to win the World Series 4-1 over the Los Angeles Dodgers. Not that we're making excuses, but the way the season unfolded in the final weeks was definitely frustrating, to say the least. We lost Aaron Judge, who with 57 homers, which was still a league-leading number as of September 21st, with about 10 or 12 games left in the season. He definitely had a chance to chase not just the 62 home runs he hit a year ago, but perhaps surpass it. And that high ankle sprain kept him out of the entire playoff run. And then a couple of weeks later, during our ALDS victory, we lost Giancarlo Stanton, who hit 47 homers with over 100 ribbies for us to an oblique strain. Our offense this season was certainly not the traditional Bronx Bombers. We did lead the American League with 246 home runs, but we're only 6th in runs scored, 4th in runs allowed. So our pitching was better than our batting this year, but certainly losing 2 players who combined for over 40% of that home run total. Clearly our 2 top offensive players for most of our playoff run definitely made it more difficult than it needed to be, and ultimately it proved to be something that we were unable to overcome. But with that bittersweet finish to the season now in the books, we are ready to get down to business. We had an option year decision for $16 million on third baseman Josh Donaldson, who hit a .190 with 13 home runs. We declined that, so he is headed to free agency. Our new goals are to win the championship, upgrade at third base, improve our team batting average, have a big total balance, build a top minor league system, bring more drafted players to the team, and bring home another championship in the next 5 years. So a lot of goals with the new owner goals from Hal Steinbrenner. Unfortunately, our budget got cut this past year. So even with moving on from Donaldson, we are not in a great financial position right now. You can see we've only got about $1 million available. And after taking Donaldson's contract off the books for next year, we still had to pare our scouting budget and player development budget back significantly, just get to the point where we have a small positive balance right now. So that is the bad news, clearly. You can see that we were at $310 million last year, $304 million this coming season. So $6 million less to spend, obviously. Can do a lot as far as negotiating these goals with Hal Steinbrenner. But the first thing that I'm really focused on is trying to clean up the financial situation of the Yankees so we're able to put more into scouting and player development and really start fixing this roster. So what I have already done is I have already made trade offers to see if we can get out of DJ LeMahieu's contract, and honestly, it looks like unlikely that we're going to be able to do that. And even with the offer that I made, trying to be conservative, we're going to have to keep a pretty significant portion of it. Don't know if they will go for that or not. And then we've also put an offer for Gleyber Torres out there to try to get his $12 million-ish contract off of our books next year. My thought right now is we've got Anthony Rizzo at first base, and Rizzo had a pretty productive season. Hit 241 average, 28 homers, 77 ribbies. Captain personality is good in the clubhouse. His WAR certainly was not exceptional, but does give us a good left-handed bat. And if we get through next year, then we can deal with potentially getting out of that team option for 2025 to save some money. But if we do get Torres, who can certainly play second base, even though we had him in left at the end because of those injuries, as well as LeMahieu off the books, that will allow us to really kind of flip the infield over to Anthony Volpe, Trey Sweeney, Oswald Peraza, and Oswaldo Cabrera, who all spent material time in the major leagues this year. So moving on from Donaldson, LeMahieu, and potentially Torres will save us some money and also open up some spots in the starting lineup for probably at least 3 of those young players, possibly 4 of them, depending on how the offseason goes. So my hope is that we start hearing back on those negotiations in the not-so-distant future. And then we've also got some salary arbitration decisions to start to make. You can see we've got a ton of players eligible for arbitration that we're going to need to make decisions on. And then Donaldson, who we've already decided to move on from because we didn't exercise a $16 million option. So we're certainly not going to submit a QO to him. Harrison Bader and Wandy Peralta are also headed to free agency. Bader and Peralta we'd consider bringing back at the right price. Just don't know that we're going to be able to get either of them for the right price. And after going through the arbitration-eligible players, we're going to offer deals to Nestor Cortez, Clay Holmes, Michael King, Jonathan Lasaiga, Clark Schmidt, Jalen Beeks, catchers Jake Rogers and Jose Trevino. We're going to probably try to move on from Domingo Herman, Lou Trevino, Luis Rengifo, JT Riddle, and then the outfielders Calhoun and Ortega, in addition to Torres. Just potentially, in some cases, wrapping up almost $3 million in Rengifo, who at best would be the last player on our 26-man roster. Lou Trevino, $4.5 million-ish. Domingo Herman, $3.5 million-ish. Based on their performances this past season when they had ERAs of over 5. Just don't think that makes sense. Think we'll be able to find some middle relief help for more reasonable prices than that. So we are going to sim ahead one day momentarily and maybe hear back on some of those other trade offers and then start trying to shop a lot of these other arbitration eligible players just to see if there's any interest with prospects or maybe useful major leaguers that we can get for them rather than just letting them leave for nothing. Going to check in on Harrison Bader. Love the glove, don't love the bat. Hit 243, 16 homers for the Yankees this year, but was below average in terms of his OPS plus and his WRC plus. Would not mind having him back, but to me he's not a $12 million player. I don't love potentially playing Judge out in center field every day since he is fragile, so we may have to look for something in the offseason, but I don't know that Bader's the right decision. And then Wandy Peralta, a solid lefty out of the pen this year for us, split the year between AAA and the majors, 4.93 ERA, so he certainly wasn't great, but we don't have a lot of left-handed arms. And he's only looking for a little over $3 million. Although this is kind of interesting. He's looking for $3.36 million, but he also says he's looking for $900,000 per year during his peak. I know there is the new long-term demand thing, but it doesn't look like we can apply it. That number seemed like it was kind of garbage anyways. But as a little over $3 million potentially, we'd consider bringing him back. But want to see what happens in terms of trying to get some of these bigger contracts off of the books, maybe get something back for some of these arbitration eligible players. Perhaps we can find a lefty reliever there. So with a fair amount of time until arbitration 3 weeks from today, and then free agency a couple days after that, don't think that we need to make a decision on Wandy Peralta right now. And then if we're really thinking strategically and long term, the Garrett Cole and Giancarlo Stanton contracts are things that I am potentially quite concerned about also. May shop those guys just to see what the market's like. I imagine we'd have to keep a huge chunk of either of those contracts, which could make it not palatable. You'll see potentially with the offer that I had made for LeMahieu had to include, at least I thought I needed to include, this is the fun of the hard mode for trading. You don't really know exactly what you're dealing with till you put an offer out there, which makes it more challenging but more realistic and interesting also. But I did include multiple prospects, one of whom is a pretty solid prospect in the LeMahieu potential trade, and we would still need to keep money. So my thought is that for Stanton and Cole, it would be a very similar situation. Quite honestly, we'll shop them and see what's out there in the coming days. My hope is maybe that Cole opts out of his contract after this coming season and saves us from being on the hook for those last 4 years, but that probably is a hope trade, to be quite honest, because he was fine this year, but the 12-15 record and a 4.56 ERA was certainly not what we're expecting to be spending $36 million a year on. And with that average movement on his pitches, he's always going to give up a fair amount of home runs unless that somehow magically improves, which in his mid-30s I am kind of doubting. And it looks like we've got almosts back on our trade proposals, but almost could mean throwing a garbage minor leaguer. Almost can also mean this trade only gets done if you also throw in Anthony Volpe or Aaron Judge. So we'll see what they have to say. I think Los Angeles was the trade of Gleyber Torres, and I think that one we probably are pretty close on. Yeah, we were sending Torres to the Dodgers, and we were getting Evan Phillips, a pretty solid relief pitcher, as I talked about, if we can add some relievers. That's part of the reason why I'm willing to let some of those arbitration-eligible players go. He led the NL in saves last year for the NL champion Dodgers. Pretty solid pitcher. Given our financial situation, I also asked for $3 million in cash. And funny that I was just mentioning, because Volpe is one of the guys who will get this deal done. So is Jose Trevino. I'm hoping some of these other guys are not quite as glittering prospects who will get the deal done. So I'll spend some time going through them and let you know what I decide. And to me, it looks like Justin Lang is the best option to get the deal done. Starting pitcher, but 22 years old. Doesn't look like he's ever going to have major league control or major league movement. Does have 2 incredible pitches. He just doesn't know where they're going to go, and they both don't seem to have a ton of break on him, with the fact that he's a fly ball pitcher and may be able to give up some home runs with him. Hasn't been above rookie ball at the age of 22. So definitely comfortable adding Lang into the deal. Torres will leave a hole in the lineup, no doubt. Hit 261 this year with 22 home runs. Very good player, someone who in real life, when he first came up 4 or 5 years ago, if you had told me that the Yankees would be moving on from him when he was 26 years old, I would have thought you were crazy. But at this point, $12 million for him is a lot. And as I talked about, we've got a lot of good youngsters coming. And I also think that adding Evan Phillips, whose arbitration number is going to be in the low 3s, definitely helps our bullpen and makes it easier for us to potentially move on from some of those other pitchers that I'd like to get something for in trade and don't want to offer arbitration to. So just with the fact that we are trying to clear cash off, I am going to respond, add Justin Lang into the deal, and we are going to go ahead and complete that trade for Evan Phillips and $3 million. And we finally traded for an all-star, apparently. So the fans not happy that Glaber is gone, but they are happy that Evan Phillips is here, so hopefully that all evens out. Looking at the front office now, that opened up some more money, so we're still not going to be quite where we want to be in terms of our scouting and development budgets, but we are getting there a little by little. Certainly Evan Phillips is going to go right on to the Major League roster, and we are also going to make sure to offer him a little over $3 million in arbitration, hopefully. Hopefully we can get it done for $3.2 million. We've had two other arbitration eligible guys who wanted to be closer. I didn't guarantee either of them the role. And it looks like we'll potentially be able to get him back without guaranteeing him the role. But Jalen Beeks, who was our closer most of last year, Clay Holmes, and now Evan Phillips all asked for the closer role in our arbitration negotiations. Didn't promise it to any of them, but think with the three of them potentially at the back end of our bullpen pitching in the 8th and 9th innings, we could have a pretty effective bullpen again in the 2054 or 2034 or 2024. You can tell that I've been playing a long-term OOTP 23 sim where I was out in was about to begin the 2050, or I just finished the 2054 season. But we are back into relatively current times, and we are heading into the 2024 season. And now time to look at this Chicago trade. And we offered LeMahieu, and as I said, we were going to have to keep 40% of it. Yorlin Calderon, decent closer prospect, not a great prospect, but two really good pitches, and if his movement and control fully develop and his stuff does, could be a pretty interesting pitcher. Put up a 3.80 ERA with 14 saves and 9 wins, splitting the year between the rotation and the bullpen. Engelth Urena is a catcher prospect who definitely has some potential also. Don't love the defensive ability, but certainly looks like he could have a good bat. And then Everson Pereira is another pretty solid prospect. Don't think he's a superstar, but certainly could be a more than respectable fourth outfielder if that plus home run power, decent defensive ability, and some speed and ability to bunt develop. So it was not an easy trade to put together, and you can see it wasn't quite enough yet. But LeMahieu making $15 million a year for the next 3 seasons. If we can only retain 40% of that gets $9 million a year off of our books, which is pretty big. And although the prospects we'd be giving up are solid, I don't think any of them are going to be world beaters. We'd get catcher Xavier Fernandez in return. He's a guy that does still have 3 option years left, so would give us a little depth at that position if we have any injury issues with our catchers. The question is how much talent are they looking for in the additional player that they want in this deal? And the guys they are looking for really aren't that great. Enrique Santana is the one we're going to include. 26-year-old pitcher. We had him back in rookie ball this past year. Greedy personality, never going to be a major leaguer. I'm so happy to include him. It's 3 decent prospects, and we're still keeping $6 million a year from LeMahieu. But the chance to get $9 million for each of the next 3 years off our books is... it's just something we can't pass up. You know, you look at LeMahieu, he's going to be turning 36 next year. Still has a good eye and doesn't strike out, but as far as actually hitting the ball, doesn't do a heck of a lot with it when he hits it. His speed is gone. He's a fan favorite, so the fans aren't going to be pleased, but he's hit 268, 261, and 258 the last few seasons, with slugging percentage in the mid to high 300s, below average OPS plus and WRC plus this past season, a WAR of less than 1. To be able to get $9 million off the books each of the next 3 years as he gets even older, I think makes sense. So we are going to add Enrique Santana, and we are going to go ahead and complete that trade. And I think, fulfilling our agreements should eventually start getting our trading reputation moving higher. If we backed out of deals, which we haven't, it would be going lower. But I think we're being pretty upfront and reasonable in our negotiations. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade. Fans are not going to be happy at all, but importantly for us, it frees up some more money. And hopefully we'll be able to get the scouting and development budgets even higher than they are right now. But this also starts to get us into a situation, I'll put them both at 16 for now, starts getting us into a situation where at least we've got some money to potentially play within free agency also. So the thing we want to do now is turn to these arbitration eligible players that we're not going to offer deals to and start seeing whether we can pick up anything of value in trade offers for them. If not, our financial situation will continue to get better when we either get these guys off the books or we just zero out the offers when we get through arbitration. So there is an opportunity for us to open up probably another $10-12 million just through the arbitration eligible players that we want to move on from, even if we aren't able to at this point do much with those Cole or Stanton contracts. Doesn't mean that we're not going to try, but I have a feeling those would be incredibly painful in terms of the percentage of those deals that we'd have to retain and or the quality of prospects we're going to have to include in the deal to get someone to take on a portion of those contracts. And sadly for Domingo Germán, the only things offered are pretty mediocre players around 30 years old who also have big arbitration numbers, so don't see him as really having a lot of value. So we are going to go ahead and zero out the offer to him. See if maybe Trevino, Rengifo, Riddle, maybe there'll be some value in some of those other guys. I'm not too optimistic, but if there's a little bit of value we can extract, I'd love to do it. And other than Domingo Germán, Rafael Ortega is the only guy that there's even a sniff of interest in. Dalton Guthrie from the Phillies, 3 option years left. Looks like he's may not even have a contract at this point. So I think he's just going to be a free agent, but at least we can bring him into our system and maybe see if we can offer him a minor league deal. I don't want to take on that contract of Mike Soraka. So we'll see if we can get Dalton Guthrie for Ortega. See if maybe they'll give us a little bit of cash also. Oh, they don't even have enough cash to do that. All right, we'll forget that. We'll submit that offer to the Phillies, see what they have to say. And, it looks like our reputation did go up a little bit with that deal that we completed yesterday. But as I mentioned, we looked at Germán, and there was some garbage offers for him. But for Trevino, Rengifo, Riddle, and Willie Calhoun, literally nobody was offered for us for those players. So our instinct that maybe we move on from them rather than offer them arbitration seemed to be correct. We'll see what comes back with the trade offer that we just put out there for Ortega. And since we've still got a couple of shops available today, let's just see any market for Garrett Cole at all. I'm not going to retain any of it. I can't imagine there's going to be any response at all. Nope. And what if I was willing to retain 25% of that large contract? There are offers. Interesting. I mean, there are offers of other aging players with bad contracts, but not as long and not as large as Cole's is. Steven Matz really does not excite me at all. Paul DeJong also does not really interest me. Oof. 2 more years. Yeah, I mean, I think we'd want the Cardinals to keep some of that contract. I mean, it's a positive in terms of freeing up money, but we are still a team that's trying to rebuild while winning at the same time. So I'm not necessarily all that enthusiastic about doing something with Cole right now. Let's take a look at the pain as far as shopping Mr. Stanton while we're putting big, long contracts out on the market. I can't imagine. I'm sure it'll be similar to Cole, where if we retain nothing, yeah, nobody offers anything in return. What if we retain 25? Oh, we're done with our shop attempts for today. Time to move on to tomorrow. Hey, at least Aaron Judge is healthy now, so we can put him back onto the roster. We've got some responses here. Trade proposal from the Mets. Right fielder Abraham Almonte. Not that exciting to get rid of a solid reliever like Michael King. Almost have the deal done with Philadelphia. We have to throw in somebody else. If there's garbage that they want us to throw in for Ortega, maybe I'll do it. And I guess since these players are real people right now, I should not be calling them garbage. But if there are players who have less potential to be major leaguers that the Phillies will accept, I will consider including them in the deal. And Yerison Ruiz appears to fit the bill on that front. So we are going to go ahead. We'll add Yerison Ruiz to the deal. We'll go ahead and complete that trade. Bring Guthrie onto our team. And we will offer him a minor league extension. Hopefully he'll go for that, and we'll at least have gotten something from getting Ortega off the books. And that continues to move our money available in a more favorable direction. And now that we are at a new day, let's just to know what the options are out there. If we were to keep 25% of Mr. Stanton's contract, is there any market at all for him? Nope. What if it's 50%? Nope. So, I mean, we kind of have to keep him at this point. I don't love the contract. I don't love that he's fragile and very injury prone. But the guy has hit 35, 31, and 47 home runs the last 3 seasons. Still a pretty productive offensive player when he's healthy. It's just that he's not healthy all that much. Not great defensively, and he's certainly overpaid for what he is. But, not even a sniff at keeping 50% of his contract. If you put it up to 75%, still nothing. There's just no way out of that contract right now, unfortunately. Just to be creative, though, and we're not going to really do this, but if I were to throw in an Anthony Volpe into the deal and retain 75% of his contract, any interest then? Wow, nope, nothing. That, to me, shows that that contract is pretty rough. But as we've talked about in previous episodes, we are also playing this in as hard a way possible, with the hard mode and trading difficulty on as hard as possible. Depending on the settings that you may be playing with. If you're playing with the Yankees in your game, it may be possible to get Stanton off in a less painful way, but retaining $24 million a year for the next few years, and then his numbers do go down a little after that, and giving up one of the top prospects in baseball for the ability to get rid of him, and nobody having any interest, means that Stanton is going to be ours for the foreseeable future. And we're starting to finally get some players signed. A lot of minor league free agents voided arbitration with Jake Rogers, voided arbitration with Clay Holmes, Nestor Cortez, Lasaiga, Jalen Beeks. The fans excited to have Beeks on board. And we're getting those guys signed for a little less than their arbitration numbers. So that continues to free up a little bit more cash for us. Not a ton, but a little bit here and there. Thinking about our salary situation, we're really not going to be players in free agency at this point, and we still don't have the budget that we'd like. That said, though, we are going to be freeing up a good chunk of money when Herman, Trevino, Rengifo, Riddle, and Calhoun come off the books. So there's part of me that wants to keep exploring a trade for Cole, but there's also a part of me that knows he's still a pretty competent pitcher at this point. And with Cole, Rodon, Sevy, Nestor Cortez coming back, and even Clark Schmidt as our number 5 starter next year, since he's now agreed to a deal, I like our rotation, and it was a pretty good rotation this past season. So my hope certainly would be that Cole opts out after next season, but I think we may have enough payroll flexibility that we don't have to dump him now. And if we do decide that there's options in free agency and we've got to move on from him, we've got 6 months till the new season begins almost, so there's time to do it. We don't have to figure this all out before free agency begins. And the fans are happy we got a deal done with Jose Trevino and Evan Phillips, who we had picked up in that trade with the Dodgers. And then Trevino was just named Gold Glove winner at catcher for us. Royals and the Twins offering us things that we're not that interested in. I had forgotten this from the past episode, but I think it's good to respond when they give us trade offers. Willie Castro is not a horrible shortstop prospect, but I'm not going to trade Michael King as well as Oswaldo Cabrera for him. So thank you, but no thank you, Minnesota. And we got a Gold Glove for our catcher a couple days ago, not surprisingly, despite missing the end of the season with that injury. Silver Slugger for Aaron Judge with his 57 home run season. Think he should still also hopefully be a strong contender for MVP, although I do think the tables may be turned from 2022 and Shohei Ohtani may end up winning the award this year. And I guess I may have undersold Aaron Judge. A monster season. He got 28 first place votes. Ohtani did get the other 2, but Aaron Judge, American League MVP for 2 consecutive years, and 119 home runs over the last 2 seasons. Would have been really awesome if he had been healthy for the last 10 or 12 games of the year, to see if he could have eclipsed the 62, and to see what the playoffs would have been like for the Yankees if he had been healthy. In addition to leading the league with the 57 homers, his on-base percentage, slugging percentage, OPS, WRC+, and WAR also led the American League in another fantastic season for the Judge. And as we get closer to arbitration hearings and free agency, we definitely need a lefty arm for the bullpen, at least one more, probably more than that. But Wandy Peralta at 3.3 million dollars a year at the age of 32 just doesn't excite me. So I think we're gonna let him move on as well. We could use some help in the outfield. I think Ian Happ's number is going to be too big, 10 or 11 million a year. That is not going to work for us. But even with all of the pitchers that we're moving on from, notably Herman and Trevino, still have enough pitching, I think. We could definitely use some help in the outfield. And center field is the most obvious hole on our team, assuming that we don't want Judge to play there. But quite honestly, as far as major league quality players, it's conceivable that right now Judge and Stanton are the only kind of two outfielders who are on our team, with the fact that we're going to move on from Calhoun, move on from Bader. We've already traded away the other outfielder we had on the team this year. Now there is some talent in the minors. Austin Wells could certainly be a fourth outfielder for us next year. Would prefer that we don't have to use him as a starter. But he did have a monster season in AAA, 306, 49 homers, 122 ribbies. Certainly nothing else for him to prove down there. So the thought is that he will likely fill one of the holes we have in the outfield. Other than that, Spencer Jones split the year between high A ball and double A, murdered the ball at both levels. He could be up next year too to help us fill the spot. So there are options, but there's not really a great center field option that I can see right now. And when we look at potential center fielders who are going to be out there, you can see Harrison Bader is right on the top of the list. Just that money for a guy who has a very average-ish bat, $12 million a year heading into his 30s. I struggle with that a little bit. We could downgrade to Albert Almora Jr., also very good defensively, not quite as good a bat. But it looks like Almora Jr., we're looking at a potentially $2.5 million tag for a durable player who's a spark plug, has some positive personality traits. To me, that could work a little better. Looks like Cody Bellinger is a free agent. He's looking for more money, but he could certainly be an option in center field too. So although it's an opening for us and it's a hole for us right now, there could be a couple options on the free agent market. And then as we get into free agency, the trade market for a center fielder and or for a left-handed reliever are also things that we can think about during the offseason. And it's also probably time to spend a little time with the dynamic owner goals. Wants us to upgrade at third base. Trey Sweeney right now is penciled in to take over for Josh Donaldson. Not hard to do much better than Donaldson did. The proposed goal, an alternative, is to increase attendance. I'm fine with the third base goal. Wants us to improve batting average. Certainly moving on from Donaldson should help with that. Option is attendance. I would love to be better than 14th in batting average, and hopefully the infusion of youth will help us get there. So fine keeping that goal. Want us to end with a $32 million balance by 2027, so that's a long-term goal. Also wants us to increase attendance within 2 years. I'd rather keep the longer-term goal. And last but not least, low priority to improve our draft record. Fine keeping that there. We've got some time to do that, although I don't know how much war we're going to have from players drafted over the next few years. Going to have to find some college prospects, but reasonably comfortable, I guess, with the goals that are laid out there now have a longer term goal that's very important to also get to a top 6 farm system. So that will be interesting to potentially pursue that in the coming years. And looking at the rest of the league news, we know that Judge was named the AL MVP. Kyle Schwarber of the Phillies, monster year, 265 average, but 65 homers and 138 runs driven in. Just a huge season for him for the Phillies, who made it to the NLCS. Blake Snell, 18-7, 282 ERA, won the NL Cy Young Award. And in the American League, Ohtani, although he didn't get the MVP, he did get the Cy Young Award. You can see Severino, who he signed to an extension, and Nestor Cortez, who we signed to a deal before he got to arbitration for the next year, also did receive some votes for the Yankees. And we've made it to the start of free agency. Rejecting all of those other arbitration-eligible contracts definitely opened up some money for us. So we're not quite where we'd want to be in terms of scouting and player development, but we are at least at a much more respectable level now with $20 million in each budget, up from last year, have some money in our draft budget and international free agency as well, international amateur free agency as well, and still looking at close to $11 million to spend to potentially improve the team here in free agency now. And taking a look at the key free agents, some familiar names, Frankie Montas, who we traded away last year to Tampa, now out with a torn meniscus. Matt Chapman, Travis d'Arnaud, Aaron Nola could be an interesting pitcher, but he'll probably be looking for a lot. Familiar name in Matt Carpenter, who actually still has a pretty decent profile at this point. Had a pretty nice year with San Diego last year, 36 homers, 90 ribbies, 3.1 WAR, even though the batting average wasn't incredible. Whit Merrifield could be a potential option in center field maybe. So there's definitely some options out there. Also some international free agents just hit the market. Whoa. Daniel Gouache out of Cuba. Looks like a very interesting pitching prospect. We don't know a ton about him yet. He's supposedly looking for $20 million. Personality doesn't look ideal, but still a potentially interesting and talented pitcher. Li Ji Mai out of Taiwan. Looks like a right-hander. A little less exciting, also looking for pretty big money. And it looks like the rest of the prospects are somewhat less exciting. Ko Ishikawa, looks like he's already signed with the Cardinals, so no chance to get him. And Juan Saucedo, looks like he's already signed with the Reds. So unfortunately no option to bring either of those young guys who look like they have a little bit of potential into our system. So they got signed before we even had a chance, even though they were just hitting the market today. So after one season as the Yankees GM, failed in the aspiration that's always the Yankees' goal of winning the World Series. But we have moved on from LeMahieu. We have moved on from Josh Donaldson. We have moved on from Gleyber Torres. At the beginning of this year, we traded away the Aaron Hicks contract. We traded away Frankie Montas. We traded away IKF. So we've got, I guess, some of the easier contracts, and granted Hicks and LeMahieu in particular were not easy contracts to get rid of, and we're still holding on a chunk of LeMahieu for the next few years. But we've cleaned up the books a little bit. You can see we've only got a very small number of guys who are on our 40-man roster with major league contracts at this point, with all the players that we let go and or have traded away over the last month or so since the season ended. But we've cleaned things up a bit financially. We've got improved scouting and development budgets compared to a year ago, and we do have some money to spend this postseason. As I talked about, left-handed pitcher for the bullpen and a potentially starting center fielder and maybe even one more outfielder are probably our two biggest needs. So we're going to have a lot of work to do and not a ton of money to get that work done. But we also have the opportunity to try to tap the trade market. So even if we are not the biggest players in free agency this year, hopefully 3 or 4 months from now when the Yankees head to spring training, the roster will be even better than it is today. And that is definitely our goal. And we'll find out what kind of progress we can make on that goal in our next episode. Until then, thank you so much for watching and hope you have a great day.